Hi, I'm Owen McDonald, Senior Editor with PYMNTS.com. I'm joined by Trish Cox, Head of Operations at Galileo Financial Technologies. Welcome, Trish.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
So glad you could be. Today, Trish, our topic is Payments Executive Insight Series Top of Mind. Okay, so we're going to pick your brain almost literally, not literally, but almost. I'm going to start with the big question. Here's the big question, Trish. When you talk to your clients, what is it that's top of mind for them these days? What are those things that you're hearing again and again?
Yeah, there's a couple that immediately pop to mind. Certainly the explosion of fraud in the industry and running after that problem pretty quickly is one of those things that is absolutely top of mind. I think a focus on quality growth as opposed to growth sort of at all costs.
Yeah, we're going to get into that.
Yeah, let's do. And then lastly, obviously with the macro environment, people are very cost conscious and really thinking through their business models, their strategy, their product mix, all those kinds of things. And how do you really hunker down and make sure that you can be successful for the long haul?
Right. Especially now when everything is so volatile and unpredictable. I can absolutely understand you getting these questions. But let's get into some of these things you just mentioned. So the need for fraud and risk prevention. Talk about the benefits of a fraud mitigation strategy with a scalable approach, Trish, that replaces manual fraud mitigation with AI and machine learning.
Yeah, and I think and the whole explosion of fraud even goes into the being cost conscious. If you look at fraud, they're connected in a lot of ways. That fraud is just growing by leaps and bounds. In 4 years, in 2027, we expect it to be about $38.5 billion in fraud losses. And it's a 20% growth. The fraudsters are everywhere. They're getting smarter. I think every firm expects some level of losses, but that kind of attack and explosion just causes everybody to rethink their strategies. And when you talked about AI and machine learning, our fraudsters are getting really smart. They have bots that fly faster than our fingertips, and simply looking for fraud at the back end or trying to shut it down can be too late. And you really have to have a multi-layered fraud strategy that is looking at all sort of points of engagement and how do you use data and analytics and all these things to get smarter. And I think, at Galileo, we're really doing some interesting work to partner with DataVisor and building a payment risk platform that actually opens up data in the ecosystem, if you will, looking at transactions that we're seeing in debit and credit and ACH and fraudsters trying to open accounts in different places. And how do we take all of that intelligence and speed up and have real-time decisioning up front to keep people out of, fraudsters out of the system? Like, how do you get so much better at preventing it rather than cleaning it up on the back end?
Intercept it, right? To intercept it before it happens, I guess, would be the ideal state, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this is so top of mind. We actually have put a paper on our website that's available to anyone around our anti-fraud playbook that allows you to think about how do you think about fraud? What's your risk tolerance? How do you apply all of these tools? How do you think about your customer experience as part of that process, right? Because you want to be easy to do business with, but you also don't want to be too easy to do business with that people take advantage of your institution.
Well, that's often how they get you, right? So you're right about that. What are your thoughts? You mentioned this a second ago, or I did. Thoughts on shifting away from growth at all costs, right? And we've just been through a period of sort of growth at all costs, and we've kind of seen the downside of it now. So in the context of building a profitable payments program, right? What does that involve if you're going to move away from a growth at all cost mindset?
Well, and it's interesting, like think about that growth at all costs mindset. And we've lived this history lesson before, if you go back in time, and it's an important one to remember through economic cycles, right? And if all you're doing is looking at top line and customer acquisition, you're not necessarily looking at your return on investment and what it costs to acquire a customer, a consumer, and to keep them engaged, and what's your path to profitability, right? And I think as companies are getting valued and folks are really doubling down and looking, they really want to understand how you not only can attract new clients, but how do you get them to activate, engage, and spend on that card that you're looking to. And we see a couple of points where consumers dropped off: that opening an account to activation and activation to funding. And those are some really important points in the journey to think about how you're ensuring you're attracting your target clients, the right clients, and then getting them to engage in an ongoing basis to make sure that you're monetizing, if you will, and growing a well-disciplined, profitable business over time.
Right. And that's, using data to really, I guess, pump up selectivity, if you will, and, who makes a good client, and things that you're sort of hinting at right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, and you really have to understand who's your client, what are your unit economics, how you're profitable, and where, ultimately breaking it down sort of into its components as they move through sort of that journey, and understanding what it takes to keep them engaged on an ongoing basis. And again, at Galileo, we've built a payments growth and activation playbook, again, on our website, that helps people think about that journey and what tools, what data, what insights you can gather along the way to help boost that spending loop, if you will, of creating that virtuous circle of having consumers that are engaged with you through the process.
Right. Now, sort of, tangential to that, if you will, how can growing businesses be cost conscious? You mentioned cost consciousness a few minutes ago. In this climate, right? How can payments and banking firms offer solutions that address these growth issues now?
I think in a couple ways. I mean, I'm a big believer that first and foremost, you've got to keep your customer-centric approach. You have to know who you're serving and make sure you're serving them well and getting them engaged. But you also have to look internally at your product mix you're offering. How are you keeping sort of retention? And you're looking at the way you've scaled and architected your own internal offerings and technology. And there's lots of great insight you can get to benchmark your spend in certain components versus others. And it really is, in times that are tough, it's sometimes when you get the most interesting innovation and sort of questioning the value of everything you're doing along the way and rethinking the processes. And I'm just a huge believer that great experiences drive great efficiencies internally. And oftentimes where you find those friction points for your clients, your customers, your consumers, whoever you're targeting, those friction points can be enlightening insights around where you need to innovate and really make sure you're building for scale and being cost conscious. I also think in thinking outside of FIs and sort of the non-traditional space, I think people are really rethinking and their product offerings and what components they need to offer to their consumers as well. So you think about embedded finance, you see non-traditional FIs, now thinking about, hey, how do I get into this game too? And look at monetizing that component of the process too. And when I say cost conscious, it's not just how do I grind out every penny from a vendor or how do I negotiate the best contracts? It's how do I maximize my revenue? How do I minimize my acquisition costs? How do I look at everything I'm doing, both on the top line and the expense line, to ensure you really can thrive in the choppy times?
Right. Great experiences drive great efficiencies. That's a bumper sticker, Trish.
I love it.
You just did it yourself.
It's been my mantra for a long time.
It's a good one. Talk about leveraging data and insights to better understand the customer. Let's get a little further into that. For example, Galileo's Voice of the Customer program is on my mind. Helping with strategies to solve growth issues. How does it work, and why is it right going into 2023, which is maybe the least, the most opaque year we've faced in a long time?
I think just a huge believer in voice of the customer as a key component to data and insight. So when I think about voice of the client, making sure you're regularly listening to your clients, engaging, acting on what you learn, and having that virtuous circle. And if something does go awry, being able to intercept and have service recovery is really, really important to driving trust with your clients. And at Galileo, we do a biannual relationship survey, which we're actually launching here in December this month. And it is so important to hear from our clients about what's top of mind for them so that we're investing in the right places and helping them cause their concerns. So when we talk about things like risk and fraud, that comes from hearing from our clients and listening about the things that they're battling and how do we make sure we've got the right offerings for them to engage. When I think about voice of the customer from a consumer perspective, as I mentioned, when things go wrong, you have the ability to step up and shine and make things right and create loyal clients for life. So I think that voice of the customer is just a key part of your operational data to help manage your business. Then when you think more broadly about data and insights and analytics, think about the massive amount of information we have at our disposal. And I know many folks struggle with how to organize it, how to utilize it, but you think about all of that actionable insight. And again, we'll click back in the conversation at growth at all costs, understanding what's happening with your clients. That's such valuable data at each point of the journey to see where you're getting a fall off or to see if you're offering promotions or rewards, like what makes the impact, and using that data to try things and experiment and figure out what works. And, being able to move forward with confidence if you've tested and tried a few things about where you get the kind of results you really want to drive for your business.
Well, you said the magic word trust, right? Which really undergirds the entire thing. So it's a lot to think about. Top of mind. Fantastic. Trish Cox, Head of Operations, Galileo Financial Technologies. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you for a few brief minutes. Thank you, Trish.
Well, thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of what we hear on a daily basis. And I think together we can do some magical things to make things better for the whole industry.
Couldn't agree more. Have a great day, Trish.
You too. Thank you.